Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show, where we get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. If you struggle with food and weight like I did, welcome home.
Welcome everybody to the Heal Your Hunger Show. So happy to have you here. It is a great day to be alive, and especially because I have an amazing guest today who's a good friend, an amazing guy, and has so much really powerful and revolutionary information to share today about thyroid health. So I'm really excited. And before I introduce him, I want to just say, if you're here at the Heal Your Hunger Show for the first time, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. This is where we talk about things, all things pertaining to emotional eaters, because it's not about the food. So we got to dig deeper into what it's really about. And so I like to bring guests on who have really critical information for emotional eaters and women who are struggling with a lot of different health challenges. And of course, I also dig into the underlying causes of emotional eating and all things, that have to do with that, including my own experiences as somebody who is 50 pounds overweight, as somebody who struggled with food and weight for so long, and the solutions that I offer around that. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. If you're not sure if you're an emotional eater, go over to my website, healyourhunger.com, and take the quiz. It'll take like 2 minutes probably, and you'll find out if you're an emotional eater or a food addict or somewhere in between. And then you'll know your score, and then we can go from there and get solutions for you. And also, so many great things happen in terms of support in my Facebook group, which is free. Go to Facebook and type in the secret sauce to end emotional eating, and boom, we'll let you in. We'd love to have you and support you on your journey of healing. So my amazing guest is next. Dr. Alan Christensen is a board certified naturopathic endocrinologist who focuses on thyroid care. He's a New York Times bestselling author whose recent titles include The Thyroid Reset Diet. It's right here. It's beautiful. Congratulations, Alan. It's awesome. Great book. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And it's just, he's been on so many, he's an amazing guy. He's world renowned for thyroid health, and thyroid health naturally. He's made appearances including Dr. Oz, The Doctors, The Today Show. And he's the founding president behind the Endocrine Association of Naturopathic Physicians and the American College of Thyroidology. So welcome, Alan. So good to have you here.
Good to be with you, Tricia. Happy to connect.
Yeah, super cool. I love the book. I love the colors. They're so pretty.
That came out good. You did a good job on that.
It is. It's a beautiful book. It really makes you want to pick up and read it. And I was doing just that. And I'm so fascinated by this. And I'll just tell you my own little bit of backstory around thyroid issues. My mom had half her thyroid removed in the 70s, late 70s, when I was a kid. And she's been on Synthroid ever since. She's 84. She's very vibrant. So it's been working for her. I mean, she's kind of a normal person. So even though she had that issue with her thyroid, that's all she did. She takes her little pill in the morning and she's good to go. And she still skis and hikes and bikes and all this kind of thing.
That's awesome.
It is. I'm very grateful. And then I was diagnosed with hypothyroid. I think that 15 years ago. And I do take a little T4 and T3. And so, which has worked out for me. I mean, it was, I had adrenal issues, so I had to address those as well. And that seemed to be the thing that was really troubling me. But I know we've talked before a little bit about one time you told me about my thyroid, like when I was taking my thyroid medication, and you helped me course correct on that, which was super helpful. But I loved the fact that in this book, you're talking about really restoring one's thyroid to where they don't even need medications. So I'm really excited to hear more about that.
It's a pretty cool story. Yeah, it's new data and much more optimistic than ever was before.
So, and new data, meaning people didn't believe this before, but now the data is coming in where it's really possible. Or is this something you've known for a long time?
This is data that's pretty new to all of us. There were some recent clinical trials and a lot of new data on how thyroid disease actually happens, what really drives it and causes it. So this is all fresh stuff.
Okay, that's great. And I love how you're always, doing your research, always on the cutting edge of what is coming out for research and new information. So, can you talk a little bit for those who don't really know a lot about the thyroid, kind of some basics? Because even though I have a thyroid condition, I was helped by reading your book and learning new things. So, can you talk just foundationally about what the role of the thyroid is in the body? First off.
Yeah, it's a little lump of stuff in your neck, and it controls how well we make energy, how well we repair our connective tissues, and how well we send nerve signals throughout our systems. So yeah, if it doesn't work, we're exhausted, hair can fall out, we can't think properly. It's just fundamental to life itself.
Right. Yeah. And of course, to anybody who struggles with food and weight, it can seriously mess with your ability to lose weight, right?
For sure. There's a lot of medical conditions that are talked about as if they're big factors for weight for a lot of people, and most of them don't contribute all that much. But thyroid disease can be massive. If it's not working right, someone's rate of metabolism, how well they burn calories, could be down by more than half. So it has a huge impact upon weight regulation.
Right. And so if somebody's like, oh, maybe my thyroid's off, and they go to their conventional doctor, oftentimes they're misdiagnosed. Is that right?
A common problem, if it's off by a large enough degree, it generally does get caught. But there's a big difference between being normal and being really healthy. So that does happen to where someone might not be totally shut off, but they may not be really thriving either. And that often gets missed.
Okay. So in your book, I read a story about somebody who did go to conventional doctor, was given iodine, right? Or iodine pills, and nothing changed for her. And then she even went to a functional medicine doctor, and that prescription didn't help her. So can we delve into the real hypothesis of your book and what you're discovering and really recommending for people?
For sure. It's a simple story, and it just baffles me how simple it is and how it's really undertold. So the thyroid needs iodine. It's a critical part of its ability to make thyroid hormones, and it's necessary. Some people, however, can't tolerate even a little bit extra, and those are the ones prone to get thyroid disease. So we now know that a little extra iodine is one of the biggest drivers of disease. And the exciting side of the story is that if someone reverses that, if they go to a lower range for a while, they've got a real high chance of the disease going away.
That's incredible. That seems so simple. Like why is this missed?
It's a tricky thing, and honestly, medicine moves slowly. There's always stories about the time lag between new information being known and being utilized. And there's really a lot of focus on medicine in procedures, new medications, new procedures, and this is really neither of those. So yeah, I'm thankful to be here with you because this is how the word is getting out about it.
Yeah, that's great. So iodine is necessary for the thyroid, but too much can hurt you, and it can be used for emergency purposes. Can you kind of flesh that out?
Well, the emergency purposes, be kind of a paradox. So if you have no iodine, your thyroid can't work. If you get too much, that stops your thyroid as well. So there are emergency situations in which the thyroid makes extra hormone. It's got diseases that cause it to pour out way too much. And in those cases, when you've got to stop it instantly, about the only thing that can work is a high dose of iodine. So yeah, kind of a paradox. When you need to stop a dangerous excess thyroid hormone output, iodine can be useful for that purpose.
Okay. So is it still conventional wisdom that if you have thyroid issues, you should be using iodized salt and kelp and things that can give you more iodine?
Well, so thyroid issues is a big category. And in that category, one of them is goiter or enlargement of the thyroid. And goiters are different in kids and in adults. And there were times in the past in which areas were so low in iodine, a lot of the kids had swollen necks. A lot of them had goiters. And in those times of history and in those parts of the world, adding an iodine often helped prevent the kids from getting goiters, and it could help some of them go away. However, that's all changed. We're now no longer in such a time.
And that's so actually that's what my mother had, by the way. That's what she had a goiter, and that's why they took out half her thyroid. So we're no longer in iodine deficit, and now we're in excess.
Yeah, back as recently as 92, 112 nations were listed as being at severe iodine deficiency. And many people in those places had problems related to too little. The World Health Organization worked hard with other groups to fix that. And it was a success. They did a really good job. So by 2014, those 112 severely iodine deficient countries, every single one of them had reversed that. All 112 are moved out of severely iodine deficient. But in that same time frame, we had 52 countries emerge as being at risk for thyroid disease due to iodine excess. And stories like your mom, people have always had some level of thyroid disease, but starting at that time around the 90s, early 90s, it really picked up, and it's basically tripled starting about then. And that's correlated with a tripling of our iodine intake.
That's incredible. So where are people getting iodine, and like what, how has this happened? Like, what are the foods, just if people don't know? I mean, I just learned some by reading your book. So what are some of the foods people like are just unconsciously getting fed iodine when perhaps it's creating excess in their bodies?
Yeah. So iodine is in a lot of things naturally occurring. Some things it's fortified in intentionally, some things it's a contaminant, and some things it's part of just food processing. So a lot of sources that have it haven't really changed much. And they're contributors to our total intake, but they're not really part of why it's tripled. And that would include seafood or egg yolks or iodized salt. They're contributors, but they've been rather steady. But the big things that have changed the most have been dairy products and bread products, so commercially baked products. The iodine in those has gone up dramatically in these last several decades. And that's a big part of what's pushed us outside the safe range.
And how come there's iodine in those products?
So bread products, this is kind of a bit of an enigma. You and I talk about processed foods, and when there's a paragraph list of ingredients, don't even bother reading it.
Right.
But there's even more than is on the list. There are ingredients that are not listed in the food labeling. So they've looked at iodized dough conditioners, and a lot of commercial breads will say that. And you'd think that's where the iodine was from, but they've done studies in which they've bought breads that were from the store, some that listed iodized dough conditioners, some that did not. And it wasn't the predictor of which ones had the most iodine. So it's used in various ways, but not in ways that reflect upon the label. So it's part of the whole food processing. Now, dairy products, it's a contaminant. So it's a great antimicrobial. You can think about iodine the way you think about bleach, both good and bad. It's as dangerous as bleach is, but it also kills bugs like bleach does. So cows that have these suction cups on their teats for hours at a time, they get irritated, they get infected. So they need sanitizing compounds to keep them from growing bacteria. And iodine is still the one thing mainly in use. And the iodine just comes in the milk. It just gets in the milk as it's being pulled out of the cows.
And is that true for like organic milk as well? Like, is there any differential between, these huge processors of, farm, on farms and small, dairy farms in Vermont?
Basically, yes. So
okay.
there is also iodine that can be added to the feed, and also fish meal can be given to cows. And then some cows that eat a lot of grasses, that may bind up with some of the iodine in their diets. And so they might get less. So organic foods may have a little less, but not enough to really change the category, not enough to really make it to where they're going to act differently for the thyroid.
Okay, that is so fascinating. Wow. Who'd have thunk it, right? This is wild. So, okay. So full disclosure, I had 2 eggs for lunch, and including the yolks. I had sea salt on the eggs. And I went to a Japanese food restaurant yesterday and had raw fish and some seaweed. So,
nothing all that weird. So our range, the range in terms of what's healthiest for people in general is about 50 to 200 micrograms.
Okay.
If someone's trying to reverse thyroid disease, their target is somewhere under 100 micrograms. And yeah, we get it from our food, our salt, our cosmetics, our supplements. So all those sources combined are what puts us at a certain level.
And so hearing this, should somebody be stopped, like for dairy and bread? I mean, bread, for instance, is probably not a great choice for emotional eaters specifically. Many people in this audience, but is the right conclusion to stop eating dairy?
Well, and this is a tough thing. I don't know. I don't like the idea of diets getting too restrictive. I don't like people getting too narrow in terms of their nutritional options, the psychological stress of food being boxed in. So I struggle with this. But for those who wish to reverse thyroid disease, then they can hit this window. And this is something that one doesn't have to do long term. It's a 3, 6, maybe 9-month time frame for those that need the most intervention. And once they've done that, they get more leeway back again, and they can tolerate some of that with less of a problem. But yeah, for those that wish to take that on, they want to make their thyroid work better. They want to lower their symptoms. And that's kind of a cool thing. So like your mom, a lot of folks have no thyroid, and I'll hear questions about if this is relevant. So how we feel is a function of how much hormone we have available, what came out of the thyroid or what came in from the pill, but it's also a function of how well our body can use that hormone. And extra iodine attacks both of those things. It makes us less able to make hormone, but also it makes us less able to use thyroid hormone regardless of where it comes from. So yeah, even if someone doesn't make much or any of their own thyroid, they can still stand to benefit to get better use of that and help improve their symptoms.
Okay. So, and then if somebody's asking, well, am I in this range? Is there testing they can do?
Well, the best thing is really just to cut out the extra sources to get there. And I say that if it were a simple matter of testing, that would be great. But the tests don't reflect the iodine in your thyroid. That's the drawback. So the tests reflect how much is in circulation, how much is in your urine, but they don't really predict who gets better. So some of the studies showing that lowering iodine helped people improve their thyroid function, they did look at iodine tests beforehand. And, not everyone got better. And so the question was, did the iodine tests predict that? You'd think if someone had a low iodine level on a test, they might not benefit by reducing it, but it just didn't play out that way. So yeah, I do encourage testing for those who have been at it for several months and not yet seeing improvement. And I talk about how to do that in the book. And in those cases, someone might have some sources of iodine still coming in, or maybe they just need longer for their detox.
Okay. I noticed in your book, you talked about the different salt choices. Can you talk about that?
It's a fascinating thing. So iodine is naturally occurring in some salt, and it's fortified in other salts. And some salts really have none. So for those that wish to improve their thyroid, you don't have to go salt-free. You got plenty of options. But a lot of
I love salt.
So I thought deeply about this, and I had been under the impression years back that some kinds of salt are almost like a multivitamin, that you're getting all these minerals, all these things from them, in addition to the taste and the cooking effects. But then I looked hard at the numbers, and yeah, some types of salt do have every mineral you can think of, but how much? How much you're actually getting. So potassium is a great example. Some types of sea salt, they do give you some potassium. Well, and if that were your main daily salt intake that came from that, you might get an extra 1/10 or 2/10 of a milligram of potassium. So consider your body's potassium budget of like 3,000 to 5,000 milligrams. That extra 1/10 of a milligram, you'd have gotten that from the tiniest little fleck of spinach or a tiny little bite of anything, any plant.
Right.
But yeah, so salt isn't a multivitamin. So once I realized that, I'm like, okay, so then what is it? It's something that we cook with, we flavor our food with that. So then I thought more about, what the chefs do and which types of salt are the cleanest, that have the least added stuff, and which ones work the best for cooking, which are the most useful for enhancing flavor. And almost universally, top chefs say that iodine makes salt bitter, whether it's naturally occurring or whether it's added in. So they by and large use non-iodized salt. And then a lot of them talk too about the physical shape of the little salt crystals. And I have no ties to any salt companies, but yeah, Diamond brand kosher salt is the one so many chefs prefer because of its shape, and it's just salt. There's no other caking agents or preservatives. It's just salt. So yeah.
So that's a good one. That's so fascinating because here many of us educated consumers, health conscious consumers, are spending a lot of money for for fancy salt. So you're telling me I can go to the regular grocery store and buy Diamond brand kosher salt?
So full disclosure, what you might experience at the store, Morton's brand kosher salt is easier to find, and it's a really good option.
Okay.
There are a few stabilizers in that. The crystals work well, but yeah, so Diamond is my favorite. I buy in bulk, like once every couple of years. I'll get like a case of this stuff. And then the other trick I learned from chefs is the use of finishing salt. So you use a little when you're cooking, but a lot of the salt, when you put it on like right before you serve the food, it doesn't take much of it to get these incredible pops of crunch and taste of it, So finishing salt is kind of like snowflakes. It's like super, super thin, these large, flat little crystals. So I like Malden's brand finishing salt. I've seen assays, it's low in iodine. But yeah, you just sprinkle the stuff on and there's not that much there, but you really get an awesome taste and mouthfeel from it.
I love that. This is great. So, so sea salt is, you recommend against sea salt basically.
Well, so Malden's is a type of sea salt.
Okay.
It's sea salt. And then Celtic brand, they've got a lot of different lines in their company. And they're light gray sea salt, both the coarse and the fine grain. Those are negligible in iodine. So those are fine for those that wish to use sea salt.
Okay, but not the pink.
The funny thing is the pink Himalayan salt is higher in iodine than iodized salt is. It's about twice as much.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I'm glad I asked. That's really interesting.
And again, salt's not a multivitamin. And so they do say that pink Himalayan salt has all these minerals. It does, but just look at the numbers, look at the amounts. Like, oh, wow, that's nothing. That has no effect.
Wow. Okay. So, speaking of vitamins, because you mentioned supplements as being high in iodine as well.
Yeah. Yeah, this is crazy. So iodine is just hard stuff to work with because it oxidizes, it doesn't stay chemically stable, and because the amounts we use are so darn small. So for all those reasons, the amounts you get of it are not consistent. And one big study just rounded up common multivitamins and looked at how much iodine was in the label, and then it analyzed them in a laboratory. And it set out to see if they had what they're supposed to have. And they don't, never, they were never even in the ballpark. And a lot of them have 3 or 4 times more than they were supposed to. So it's the amount on the label is already too much for someone with thyroid disease.
Wow.
But they don't have the amount on the label. They've got way more than that.
So how does one, what are the better multivitamins and other kinds of vitamins to buy? Is it, is there a certain brand or, is just buying anything off the shelf not recommended? Is Whole Foods brands okay?
So here's the thing. So people have different tolerances for iodine. And for a lot of people, they can have extra and it's like water off a duck's back. No effects. They're totally fine with that. But those who have thyroid disease or are prone to it, it's not them. So we made the Daily Reset Pack, which is formulated 24 nutrients. Each one has a story for why it's best for thyroid function. And we left out the iodine. There's about 3 commercially made iodine-free multivitamins I'm aware of. There's just not very many. But yeah, it's thyroid disease makes different needs for nutrients.
Great. So you have a package of nutrients people can get that actually supports their thyroid and obviously has the minimum amounts of iodine. I love that.
None. Yeah, we assay it and we make sure.
Oh, cool. So cool. So let's transition and talk about cosmetics because this is a big surprise to me as well. Oh my God, what I could be I use natural cosmetics, so I'm assuming it doesn't have iodine, but why should I assume that? Because all kinds of other healthy things have iodine.
Well, so here's the thing. So iodine is a really handy chemical. And in the past, we use it for pretty much everything, but we keep figuring out safer ways to achieve the same goals and we use it in less areas. Carrageenan, a lot of carrageenan fell under ill repute and a lot of its harm came from its iodine. So we use less of that. But in cosmetics, iodine makes creams smooth and makes them not separate their parts out and it makes them not get rancid. So it's useful. So yeah, we'll see PVP as one of the main iodine containing names in regular cosmetics. Natural cosmetics still use it, but they call it kelp extract or they call it seaweed extract, but it's still PVP. And I did the math on this stuff. And so the FDA banned iodine in hand sanitizers a couple of years ago, because too many hospital workers were developing illnesses from it. It goes in our bloodstream from our skin. And because it's microgram amounts, the little bits add up. And so then I thought through, well, how much can we find in cosmetics? And I did all the math and showed that even though PVP might only be 0.5% of the whole volume of the solution, and the chemical itself is only about 12% iodine by weight, and we only absorb about 4% of iodine across our skin, I still kept chopping all that stuff down. And even with all that, a conditioner, a face cream, a body lotion, you can end up with 10 times the safe limit of a day's dose of iodine just from that one application.
Okay, so are you in the shampoo and conditioner business now too?
I'm not. But no, and here's the thing is there are a lot of safe options. So this is not in the majority of products. From looking over popular names and reading a lot of ingredient labels, my hunch is that it's about a quarter or the third of the products have it. So it's not that, take a look and maybe yours have it, maybe they don't. If they do, you've got a lot of other options that don't have it. But in the book, I went through all the various names you can find because PVP is one, but there's about 24 different names that can be used as well.
It's like sugar by any other
name.
Yeah,
exactly.
No sugar. Oh my God. So this is so fascinating. And it is slightly discouraging because, when we're trying to be healthy and we see things like kelp or, some kind of seaweed, we're thinking, go nature, but we're still, causing harm to our bodies. So, well, I just love all this information. I think it's so fascinating. I love that you're always on the forefront, and really taking care of your own, clients, but really people in, at large, because we need this and we need people who are really doing the research and crunching those numbers, and making sure that we get healthier by the day and stop, unnecessarily medicating our bodies. So thank you so much, Alan, for your incredible work and your incredible book, The Thyroid Reset Diet. Just a few more questions about foods. And also, by the way, if people want to get their hands on this book, you can go to Amazon and it's there and it's, it's available to you. So, what foods, so we've talked about dairy, we talked about bread products, anything else that's sort of like, wow, big surprise to people?
Supplements, cosmetics, salt, those are some of the big foods. I think the biggest wow that got me was what the potential is here. So in one of the representative studies, they took a group of people that had thyroid disease untreated for about 4 years. And they were very severely symptomatic and they had very abnormal levels. They were way off the charts. And they did nothing but this for 3 months. They just had them regulate their iodine. And what they saw was that in those 3 months, 78.3% of people became perfectly normal. They had totally healthy thyroid function, no medication, no supplements, no lifestyle, just that. And not even necessarily, those studies weren't even done on that complicated of a diet. It was just this one thing. So they got better almost 80% of the time. But what was even cooler is that of those who didn't get better, many of them, they really hadn't lowered their iodine. So they were checked after the fact and it turned out there was still some coming in or they still had a lot to come out. So they didn't get better because either they missed some sources or they hadn't given enough time. So that was one group. Okay. Another group, their starting levels were so abnormal that they improved by half or more. They weren't normal, but they were closer to it. So they were getting a lot better, but they weren't done yet. That was another group. And then there was those to where they did it right. They cut out the iodine and their numbers just didn't budge. That was 3% of people. So 97% had some potential of improving even after years of having disease.
That's incredible. And so it's a matter of really examining the diet, reducing the iodine in the diet. Is there a way to detox from this stuff or just the reduction alone? That's what's going to help heal the body?
It is. And the issue which you alluded to is that the thyroid can't really dump out iodine except for in thyroid hormones, and it can't make extra thyroid hormones. So that's why you can't get rid of it fast. Okay. You can get rid of a little bit outside those hormones, but just such tiny amounts. So so if someone had a lot that built up over time, it may take them 3, 6, 9 months to really clear that out, but they can. We used to think that once you had thyroid disease, you were stuck with it. Now we know is that it's just very easy to get enough iodine to keep it going. That's why it persists.
Great. And can you talk a little bit about the diet itself, how long it takes, and what's in the book in terms of all the yummy recipes that I saw?
I'd love to, and I'm really proud of this. So the studies that were done were on very, very, strict diets that cut out like massive food categories and gave few options. All they cared about was short-term reduction of iodine. And you and I know that diet is so much more than that. So I knew some folks would be doing this for a while, and I wanted them to have healthy food and a well-rounded, nutritionally complete diet, things that covered the basis for the micronutrients, things that were easy to make and good recipes. So that's what this is. So it's that iodine reset phase. And when someone does get their thyroid better, I encourage then the maintenance ideas, which basically I put all the foods into green light, yellow light, red light. So to fix your thyroid, eat green light foods. That's simple.
Okay.
Once you've fixed your thyroid, you're welcome to add in a couple of yellow light foods each day if you like. So that's the whole process.
I love it. So simple and easy to do. I'm jumping on a plane in a few hours. This book is going in my knapsack. I'm gonna keep reading it. I love it so much, and I'm excited to do this because I would love to not need the medications that I use. I would just love it. So
now to you and to your listeners, in this case, your needs may change. So please do recheck your scores a month after starting because you may need less.
A month. Okay.
You've got to adjust things to keep it safe.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Awesome. Well, Alan, thank you so much. This is really exciting. Congratulations again on the book. Everybody pick it up on Amazon.com, The Thyroid Reset Diet. And I have one parting question for you. This being the Heal Your Hunger show, what is your deepest hunger?
My deepest hunger is to close the gap between what we know can help and what we do. There's so much good wisdom out there that you share with the world that we have available, and people just need to be able to access that. And with that, we can do so much better.
Amen. To your health. I love it. Thank you so much, Alan. Great to have you as always. Great to hear you. You make so much sense. You put it in such easy, digestible words, pardon the pun. And I just really appreciate you. I love you. I love your family and your beautiful wife. And just thank you so much and all the best to you. And thanks everybody for tuning in. This is where you come for really hot off the press, amazing information to heal your body and your spirit. So thanks, Alan. Great to have you.
Good to see you, Tricia.
Yeah, you too.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to get free support, insider health info, exclusive invites to events, and more, visit healyourhunger.com.